Marco.
Hello Internet, I'm Spooky,
Marco.
and that's Boo, and today we're reviewing Josh Malerman's horror
Marco?
thriller, Birdbox.
This game isn't very fun. Hi, and welcome to Spooky and Boo's book reviews. Now, before we get started, we just want to give a quick warning that there might be some minor spoilers in this video. Nothing major, we won't tell you who Luke's father is, but if you'd prefer to read the book knowing nothing at all, you might want to click away now.
Or just skip forward to see if it's hot or not. Get it? Because we're ghost peppers? Each episode, one of us will pick a book for us to read. We'll then review that book and let you all know what we thought.
We're starting off with Birdbox, which is a Boo pick. I found this on some random book list, I think. So let's get started.
The story follows Mallory, a woman in her early 20s who has just found out she's become pregnant from a one-night stand. At the same time, Mallory and her sister Shannon begin to hear disturbing news reports about a rash of murder-suicides, starting in Russia but quickly spreading to other countries. As the incidents, deemed the problem, become more and more frequent, it becomes clear that in all of them, the perpetrator saw something that made them go violently insane. The story of Birdbox is presented non-linearly, following Mallory through 3 different time periods: the beginning of the problem, her time in a safe house, and the present day, where Mallory is faced with a 20-mile journey downriver, blindfolded and with children in her care in order to reach safety.
Okay, so things that we liked. For me, I think one of my favorite things was how it used blindness as a tool to make very simple tasks super stressful and scary.
I agree 1,000%.
Yeah, for example, this doesn't really give anything away, but they're still living life normally, so they have to do things like going to fetch water from the well that is outside. So something that would just, in any other scenario be a minor errand, all of a sudden becomes this life-threatening,
Oh man.
pee yourself while you try to get water event.
I was gonna bring up that exact scene, and I agree 100%.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of those things where it's unique in the sense that it's not like there's zombies out there or something that will attack you in that sense. Since it's a sight-triggered entity, it's very unique in its way of creating fear and tension. It's almost psychological instead of physical.
I think that the thing that I really enjoyed was how you really got a sense of danger from everything, because even the simplest act of looking out the window could be fatal. And you really saw the level of precautions that the characters had to take to keep themselves safe in a world like this. And you started to really see that wear on them, because they had to be, like you said, even the simplest task suddenly became terrifying, and that sort of played into a sense of claustrophobia, because now you can't even step out your door without taking a huge risk, and it really limited the characters in what they knew and what was available to them, and that sense of claustrophobia started to build into a bit of paranoia. And one of the things that I enjoyed was, because the story splits between 2 timelines, you see Mallory, the protagonist, you see her at one point and then you see her at the other, and you see the difference in her personality. The characters weren't a huge strength of the book. They weren't bad. They weren't poorly written.
No,
but they
I
weren't
think Mallory
super
was
deep.
a solid character to be following, but on her own, you wouldn't really want to see her life on a random Tuesday. But since the circumstances surrounding her are so interesting, she is a good person to be following in this case.
And I think the thing that I really liked was that you saw the change from one scenario, one timeline to another. And you saw how she changed as a character and how just the horror of living in a world like this where it's so dangerous to do even the simplest thing kind of weighed on her. And I thought that sense of fear that is created because even the simplest thing is now super dangerous was really effective in the book. I felt like that was one of the big strengths of the book.
Yeah, and also I think in the future timeline, the fact that the young kids have basically only known this world definitely brings things into, even a harsher perspective of this really young generation that literally doesn't know what the outside looks like, which is pretty hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, that's true. I had almost forgotten about that, but that's a huge thing to really wrap your brain around. These kids have never seen the sky. They have no idea what the moon looks like, and that's kind of insane when you think about it.
Yeah, and it really also allows you to see them through Mallory's eyes and how much it pains her to know these, that they're growing up in this environment and her having to balance keeping them safe with giving them a little bit of a normal life, I guess.
I think one of the things that she went out of her way to do is she goes out of her way to train their hearing so that they have incredible abilities to pinpoint sound and things like that. But that even of itself becomes a great tool for building suspense because they'll hear things, but you can only be so sure when you hear something. So they'll hear a sound and you're like, okay, there's something 10 feet away, but what is it? Is
also,
it a squirrel?
Yeah, like they don't know what a squirrel is. They could
That's
be
true.
hearing. Yeah.
Is it a squirrel? Is it a jaguar?
Yeah.
I mean, jaguar is probably slightly less likely, but it could be. You never know.
Oh, one of those jaguar squirrels.
One of those jaguar squirrels. One of those jaguars that lives in Boston, But yeah, I thought that the sense of fear that the environment that they're in creates is really effective. I also thought that both storylines ended in really powerful scenes. I thought they both had great climaxes that really brought that storyline to a head, and were very well written, very powerful scenes. I thought they were a real strength in the book.
Yeah, and I think even though the characters might have not been as developed as I would have liked, they're not bad. I think there's just enough people in the house to keep the dynamic interesting and changing, but at the same time it doesn't feel like a giant community. It's definitely, like you said, very claustrophobic, very unhealthy, like any place where you're closed off from new ideas and new people.
You start to stew
Exactly.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And that stew is never good. It's never a tasty stew.
Never beef stew, yeah.
Nope. And I think this was a book that was very good at doing a specific thing. It's a thriller. It is exactly as advertised. I agree that the characters, they, for the most part, with a couple exceptions, they weren't incredibly fleshed out, but they did have distinct voices, which I think is important. They didn't all sound like each other.
No.
They did have just enough personality in their dialogue and in their behavior that these definitely feel like 4 or 5 different people. And I think that was enough. I think this book wasn't trying to be, an all-encompassing masterpiece, but it was trying to be a very effective thriller, and I think it absolutely succeeded in that.
Okay, so then what about the other side? What did we not like?
There really wasn't a lot that I there wasn't a lot that struck out as a weakness in the book. There were things that you could kind of tell weren't the focus. Like I said, the character development wasn't super deep for the most part, but that didn't really take away from it. It just thought, okay, this is a thriller, and it did what it needed to do very well. The only things that I think, and it didn't even bother me so much in the moment, but it was one of those things that, like, once you put the book down and think about it, which I probably shouldn't do. I mean, it's a supernatural thriller, but
Yeah.
there were a few parts that once you thought about it for more than a couple minutes, you were like, I don't think that would work out the way they did it in the book.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty unlikely, and this is coming from a disembodied Pepper.
That's
But
true.
I think there were a few parts that didn't really hold up to scrutiny when you thought about it for more than a few minutes. But again, it's a supernatural thriller about a world where you can't look outside. So you do have to have a little bit of suspension of disbelief. And that shouldn't be an excuse for anything. But I think the issues that I had were pretty minor for the most part. There were a couple specific scenarios, which, we won't go into. But it wasn't a major detractor from the book. There weren't things happening where you were like, okay, that's completely ridiculous. It was stuff that was relatively minor.
Yeah, I think for me, there, like you said, there were some points where you had to kind of give the book the benefit of the doubt, and I feel there were also some, questions left unanswered. Obviously, it's not the type of book where at the end you get all the information about everything. It is a supernatural thriller, so I think those types of book always have a little bit of mystery left to them. But I feel that some people might want a little more explanation on some aspects, so that could be an issue. But in my case, it didn't bother me a lot. It's just something, like you said, after you put it down, you still kind of, since it's a fun read, you're kind of left thinking about the world and all that. So it's a testament to the book that you're still thinking about it after you put it down. But at the same time, you start seeing a few things you either want more information on, or you're like, like you said, it wouldn't quite work that way.
And I mean, to be fair, I would love to read another story in that world. I would love to hear another character's point of view in that same world. I think there's still territory in that idea that you could explore.
Oh yeah, I
yeah.
think this is a small story about this giant event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's kind of
So
like, to keep with the zombie example, it's like, how you're like, oh, Walking Dead, like, you're just following this group, but you don't know, like, in a different country, it's just everyone happy and fine.
That would be kind of insane if, like, this whole thing is only happening in northern U.S. and, like, people in Florida are fine.
Yeah.
Like, they have
Like
no
Disney
idea.
is still running. Yeah.
People are hanging out with Mickey Mouse. Meanwhile, Mallory's, like, trudging down a river and, like, that would be kind of insane.
Yeah.
Okay. So, that's pretty much our thoughts on the book. And now for our ratings. Boo, what did you think?
Overall, I really liked this book. I thought it had a very interesting structure. I think the pacing was amazing. This is a book I would really love to have on a long flight. And it took a concept we can all relate to, which is darkness and moving around in the dark, and did some really interesting things with it. This is actually the author's first novel, and I'd be very curious to see more of his work. So I'm gonna give this 4 out of 5 peppers. What about you, Spooky?
I would agree. I really liked this book. I thought it was a very effective supernatural thriller. It did a great job of creating suspense and building tension both in between the characters and in the story itself. The writing was good enough, the character development was good enough. There wasn't any part of the book that seemed like a weakness, and it was extremely good at doing what it did best, which was building tension. Overall, I would give this book 4 out of 5 peppers.
Actually, Netflix is making a movie based on this book. It should come out sometime in 2018. So far, they have cast Sandra Bullock as Mallory, as well as Sarah Paulson and John Malkovich in supporting roles. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching. Click like if you enjoyed this review, and make sure to subscribe to keep your YouTube haunted.
Get it? Because we're good.
Spooky! And follow us on Instagram, where we will be sharing what book we're currently reading.